Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Supported Employment, Building a Path to Meaningful Work. Thank you for joining us. My name is Katie Law, and I am a Public Education Coordinator at the Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey. The Alliance is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide education, awareness, prevention strategies, advocacy, and support for individuals and families impacted by brain injury. Quick announcement for next month. We're excited to kick off brain injury awareness through the month of March, and we have quite a few events to be on the lookout for. Next week is a webinar on supporting recovery through community engagement that will be held on March 3rd from 12 to 1. We also have Get Out There, Overcoming Psychosocial Challenges After Brain Injury on March 18th from 12 to 1. A few housekeeping items before we begin. All attendee microphones have been muted. The presenter is happy to take questions throughout the presentation, so please feel free to type your question into the chat at any time. We'll address as many questions as we can during the session. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing later on the BIANJ website. At the end of the webinar, a link to a brief post-webinar survey will be shared in the chat. We value your feedback, and completion of the survey is required to receive a certificate of attendance. Once the survey is submitted, your certificate will automatically be emailed to you. Our presenter for today's webinar is Jessica Short. Jessica is a senior training and consultation specialist for the Employment Project at the Boggs Center on Disability and Human Development. She conducts the employment specialist training and provides technical assistance to community providers regarding meaningful day and supported employment. Jessica has worked in the field of community-based disability services as a group home manager, trainer, behavior specialist, and employment specialist. Before she joined the Boggs Center, she was the program director for a supported employment program working with young adults to foster positive transitions from school to adult life. Jessica received her Bachelor of Arts degree in education from the College of New Jersey and her master's in human resource management from Rutgers. I am pleased to welcome Jessica Short.
Thank you very much, Katie. I'm very excited to be here. All right, I'm going to pull up my presentation. Good afternoon, everybody. All right. All right, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for, I don't know, hearing my bio. I'm like, ugh. I've been doing this a while, and I am excited to talk about supported employment because I feel like it is such an important topic. So we're going to talk about supported employment, building a path to meaningful work. Right? And today's presentation is for job seekers, families, professionals in the field. And as Katie said, please feel free to put any questions into the chat, and I will try and stay on top of them. Okay. So as we talk about employment, I want to talk about employment as the journey that it is for everyone, and a very individual journey for everyone. Okay. So today, what I'm hoping for is that we are going to identify tools and resources that promote successful supports and sustainable employment that we will describe. We're definitely going to describe the phases of supported employment and explain how supported employment providers work in partnership with job seekers on their employment journey. Okay. So as we kind of look at this, I want you to walk away with some practical tools and some next steps when it comes to employment. So let's talk about employment first. Employment is many things to a lot of people. Okay. For some, the work is about the paycheck and what we need. Okay. um, what we need to survive and to have the life that we want. Okay. Okay. That's it. An interesting question that just came into the chat. And I will say, I'm looking at and I'm talking about supported employment from the perspective of general supported employment. Okay. Getting into supported employment and getting into working and things like that. And yes, there are some nuances. Okay. But where to and how to access supports is what we will be talking about. All right. But please feel free to ask questions along the way. Okay. As for talking about, employment and the reasons for employment, okay? Um, Lots of different purposes around it, okay? Whether it's um, overall well-being, connection to the community, growth, okay? When it comes to um, when it comes to employment for people with disabilities, any kind of disability, right? Access to employment often requires intentional supports, which is why supported employment exists. Okay. Now, as we talk about supported employment, what is it? Right? Supported employment is an evidence-based approach, right? Defined in the Rehabilitation Act, right? That assists individuals, right? And in the Rehabilitation Act, in the amendment to the Rehabilitation Act in 1986 is when we first saw the definition of supported employment, right? Which defines supported employment as assisting individuals with the most significant disabilities to obtain and maintain competitive integrated employment in the community, right? So that definition in the Rehabilitation Act really legitimized supported employment as a vocational rehabilitation outcome, right? It's grounded in individualized job matching based on a person's strength, interests, abilities, and informed choice, right? And includes ongoing support services, right? Such as job coaching, workplace accommodations, and follow along supports, right? To really promote long-term success, stability, and inclusion in the workforce, right? Everyone has the right to work, right? Getting a job is tough for everyone. Supported employment is really about coaching, right? A coach acts as a guide to assist people to improve performance, develop skills, and achieve their goals, right? Assessing strengths and areas of improvement along the way, as well as providing motivation and feedback, create plans, facilitate growth. That is what supported employment is meant to be, right? It's meant, that service is meant to support you in the job search. Okay? So as we look and talk about, right, employment, there's no there's no one right job or right job path. There's no single definition of success, right? Your path, your journey, your job is about you, right? We all have different strengths, needs, goals. And employment can vary by a lot of different things, right? Um, Hours of work, right? How many hours a person works in a day is going to be different based on that person. The time of day, right? I am a much better, I am much better during the day. There are some people that are really good overnight, very different. right? The work environment, the pace of the job, the support needs. Okay? The goal is to find what works for you, right? And your experiences shape what works best for you. Mm. That's about understanding yourself, right? And making sure that we can communicate and share that information with those providing us support along our journey, right? It would, and it should always be about understanding you, not limiting. So as we talk about supports, the bottom line is that you are the expert on you, okay? Receiving support, right? Especially employment supports. It is not about professionals deciding for you. Okay? Your voice leads the way because you know what matters to you. You know what works and what doesn't work. You are the captain of your employment journey. Okay? So you and those that know you well bring this essential knowledge and information about your strengths, your interests, um, and needs that professionals don't know. Professionals and service providers have valuable information from their education and their experience regarding specific disabilities and strategies and supports, right? However, when it comes to you, you are the expert on you, okay? Professionals and providers should be supporting, not directing the process. Mm. Knowing why work matters to you helps guide decisions. Okay? And so, that being said, I want to talk about some tools that can help you to kind of put that information down and ask that information of yourself ahead of time. Like the things that you want, the things that are important to you. Mm, okay. And really thinking about how to capture that information ahead of time. Right? So some of you may be familiar, you may not have heard of these before, but charting the life course tools, I think are incredible tools for anybody. Okay. Actually, Bethany and Rob and I, if you were here for their presentations, we all took an ambassador training in these tools, and they were extremely eye-opening for me because to learn to use these tools, we had to use them on ourselves, and I think they were incredible. Right? Um, but these are tools that can help you think about what you want and need in terms of your overall life, and more specifically, when it comes to conversations of employment. Right? These life course tools help to think beyond services to kind of this full life. And I don't know about any of you, but when I get into a meeting and people start throwing questions at me, I forget everything that I wanted to bring to that meeting because I'm now trying to process all these questions that are coming at me. And I came in there so prepared to say all these things that I wanted to say. These tools can really help to have that information and think about that information ahead of time, right? Taking an honest look at who we are and what we need to know about ourselves. You know? So a couple of the tools that I wanted you to kind of walk away with are these, right? First, we have an integrated support star, right? And the reason that I bring these tools up is because as we talk about supported employment and we talk about supported employment services, it's so important to bring the information that about ourselves to these supports, right? And think about this ahead of time because this is your employment journey, right? This is your job search. Right? So the integrated support star I love and can be used in any stage of our life, really. But when you look on their website, they have them for specific parts of our life. And this one just happens to be for employment. Right? Um, and I like it because each part of the star is looking at a different part of our life. Right? And each part of the star is kind of divided from now and the future. Right? So discussions and thinking about who you are right now and the support you're using right now, right? And then being able to plan for what might be helpful in the future in each of those areas, right? And looking at, the top part, that light blue area, are our strengths and assets, right? Personality traits, soft skills, transferable skills, right? But in terms of what an employer would value about us, right? The technology in the pink area there that we use, anything from our devices and apps and anything that support our life. Because when we think about on the job, those are things that could be, right, support needs accommodations on the job. When we look at relationships in the purple area, thinking about everyone from close family and friends to acquaintances and people that we see regularly. These are our networks and natural supports, right? When I talk about employment overall, right? The old saying of it's not what you know, but who you know, it's so true, right? And the more we think about the relationship we have, it speaks to the importance of social capital. When we're job searching, the more people who know that we're looking for a job, the better, because they know people and then our networks grow. Right? Natural supports are those that are naturally occurring in our life, right? Things that and natural supports that could be our transportation to work, our connections in finding a job, right? The support we need isn't always a paid service, right? And those natural supports usually last longer than service providers. So a tool like this helps us to identify that and identify who those are. Mm. Looking at the community support section or community resource section here, where do we go? Where do we go in the community? What are we a part of? What are we members of? Right? Is this sparse? What can we what can we do to explore the community? Right? Do we volunteer? Are we members of groups? Right? And then finally, the green area in this integrated support star is eligibility supports. Okay? This is what we're eligible for. Right? What is that? What is it that we're already, eligible for? Services like, and we're going to discuss Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, DDD, right? Division of Developmental Disabilities, um, CBVI, Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. We're going to talk about all of those, right? But not just that, right? And not just what we're eligible for due to a disability status, but also what are we eligible for based on our age? based on our income level, based on our employment status, our geographic location. It's looking at all of those things and really looking at how all of those can work together. Right? So again, this integrated support star and looking at the now is a great place to kind of pull our thoughts together, pull the information that we know, right? So that when we are going with and meeting with an employment support provider, we have this information ahead of time and we don't get in it and we're like, I don't know what strengths I have, right? Or I don't know what's good about me. Think about it ahead of time because they don't know about you. They don't know anything. And so they need to hear it from you. Okay. Another part of this and another tool that's kind of in this package of tools from Charting the Life Course, right, is this Life Course portfolio. It's more information about you, okay, that someone needs to know to support you, right? Everything from um, qualities about you, experiences you've had, the supports that you need, the supports that you know about right now. And you might not know everything, but and you might still be learning what you need or what's even available. Right? But a place to kind of put that in a way to start the conversation. Your learning preferences, right? Think about that too. Are you someone that needs to get hands-on to learn something, or do you like someone to show you ahead of time? Right? Also, what motivates you, right? And what is encouraging to you? What keeps you going, even when things get tough? Right? Because those are all really important things if someone's going to support you that they need to know about you. Um, Sorry, I'm just checking the chat really quick. All right. Robert, I appreciate you pointing that out, and that makes me want to really look further into that. So I really appreciate that. One of the other, and I'm going to go into one more tool that I really think is a great tool for any aspect, any meeting. Like whether it's a meeting that you are having with a support provider or whether it's meetings that programs are having, like I think this tool can be used for everybody. But this tool right here, there's a lot of iterations of it on their website. This just happens to be, again, planning for employment. But I love it because it's such a great visual depiction of how to keep a meeting on track, right? Um, so, right, stay with me on this, but I want you to think about this. How often and think about when you're in meetings. It's a lot easier. And I know as an employment specialist, I remember going into a lot of meetings and people right away know what they don't want, right? How often have you thought about, I do not want this kind of job. I don't want to work with these kind of people. I don't want to do this type of work, right? A lot of the times it's the easiest to get that out, and that's good. And this tool gives a great place in that lower right-hand corner there. There's a great place to put all of that information and to park that information because it's all valuable information, right? So once we get that filled, it's great to be like, great, we know what we don't want now. Now we need to fill what you do want. What are your visions of a good job, of a good life? What type of environments? All of that. so that you have those two areas. This is what I want, this is what I don't want. And then as we have conversations, this is a great way of steering that. And as we talk about supported employment phases and all of that, a good supported employment provider is going to help you steer that conversation. And as you're talking, does that sound like something that is a step towards what you do want? Or does that sound like something that's going to move you more towards the type of job that you don't want? And so it's such a great way of guiding the conversation. Absolutely. And that is why, and that's why I love this tool, because it's a place to keep all of that, because it is valuable information. Eh, I have a coworker that it really rings true in any part um, of our lives and the work we do. And she always used to say, it's never failure, it's feedback, right? And even the negative stuff is feedback. It's giving us more information and it's important, right? So that's why I love this tool. So these tools, again, are about empowering you to take hold of your job search, right? Because this is your process. This is going to be your job. So taking a hold of that and having that information ahead of time, right? To inform the as you start working with a supported employment provider. Okay? So, how do you start working with a supported employment provider? Right? There are three funding agencies in New Jersey for supported employment or for community employment. Okay? So there is the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, CBVI, which is part of the Department of Human Services. There's the Division of Developmental Disabilities, DDD, which is also part of Department of Human Services. And there's the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, DVRS, okay, which is part of the Department of Labor. Right? So supported employment services is going to come from one of these three areas. Okay? So I'm going to start talking about DVRS, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Okay? DVRS is the first stop for employment supports, right? Um, as they serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, and mental disabilities. Okay? Now, I say first stop, right? But we'll get into Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired if anyone falls into that, because that is the first stop for someone who falls into the category for their support. But when we're talking about DVRS, right, let's talk about this process. You know, the process, a person completes a referral form online and or can call their local DVRS office, right? They're going to ask basic questions and then asking about disability and how it affects work, right? A person is then going to be contacted by a vocational rehabilitation counselor to set up a survey interview appointment in the office. Okay? The VR counselor is going to then determine eligibility of services or whether or not a person will benefit from the DVR services available. Okay? If determined eligible, then an individual plan of employment is developed with the person. Okay? Now, then, right, that individual plan of employment is put together and a referral is made to a supported employment vendor for services. Okay? Okay. Okay. Uh, oh, That is unfortunate. I'm glad that, yeah, and there is a handout too, and I'm assuming, Katie, you guys are sending out those handouts. There is a handout that also has a website that will take you directly to the DVRS website, where you will see the referral form, also the survey interview and what it looks like and kind of questions that they would ask you. Okay. So there is a way to find that. I know it's not always easily found on the websites, but I do have that in a handout for you. Okay. Um, okay. Yes, and I do advise you, Bethany Chase, my wonderful teammate, um, did to um, a a really great presentation on the ADA and reasonable accommodations. So definitely take a look at that. But I also going to put my email address in as well, and I'd love for any questions to please come my way at any time. Okay. All right, so DVRS, first up. Now, and that's for anybody with an intellectual developmental disability, a physical disability, and a mental disability of any sort, right? DVRS. There may also be individuals and people who are eligible for DDD services, right? So if that is the case, then DVRS is still the first stop, but if you do not receive services through DVRS, if the person is also DDD eligible, they can access services, right, through support employment services through DDD, right? And if the person is also DDD eligible, there are other services other than supported employment that can be accessed at the same time as a person is receiving supported employment services through DVRS. Right? Okay. In that handout, there is also the link to the Charting the Life course. Okay. So the resources handout that I did have, that website is also on there. Mhm. All right. So let's look at the eligibility for DDD. Okay. So to be eligible for DDD services, a person must be 21 years of age, right? There are particular instances that there may be services prior to 21, but they are few and rare. Okay. To be eligible, the person must have a documented disability appearing before age 22. Right? Must be Medicaid eligible for DDD. Okay? Now, the reason that DVRS is the first stop for employment is because DDD, Division of Developmental Disabilities, is the last dollar in, right? Meaning that if funding is available somewhere else, that route has to be used and or explored first, right? So the fact that funding is available from DVRS, um, a person who is DDD eligible and wants to use supported employment services has to first go to DVRS and use the supported employment services there. Right? Now, again, like I said, if someone goes to DVRS and the VR counselor doesn't think that the person would benefit from services that they have available, right? If the person is DDD eligible, they can get those support employment services through DDD. Okay. All right. Any questions there? All right. In that resource handout, you will also find the website for DDD so that you can see the eligibility there, right? And you can see what has to happen to sign up for that. Right. All right. Now I'm going to get really confused here. Okay. If a DDD eligible person goes to DVRS and receives support employment services, all right, there is a point where we're going to talk about phases of support employment. And the last phase of support employment is called long-term follow-along. And when a person gets to that point, they are going to then have to use different funding sources. They're going to change from DVRS to DDD funding, right? So the bottom line is to look and see where your eligibility for supported employment comes from, right? You start out with DVRS, right? Um, and look at and try and use the services there, right? If someone is also DDD eligible, there are lots of different services, right? Beyond supported employment that are also able to be used, right? When it comes to supported employment, it is no matter what provider is being, or no matter what funding source is being used, you're going to then be referred to a supported employment provider, right? And that's the important part, is finding the right provider, right? It's figuring out where the funding comes from, but it's also making sure that you get a support employment provider that uh, that you feel comfortable working with. Mm. All right, really quickly too, just making sure that we highlight there is another funding source for supported employment, and that is the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. So if anyone, right, is a person who is blind, visually impaired, or at risk of becoming so, and that is who the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired works with. And their first stop for employment support, okay, can be CBVI, right? Because the commission coordinates and provides preventative, rehabilitative, and assistive services through a person's lifespan, right? They can work with someone when they're a child in elementary school, in middle school, in high school, and work again with them through college, and work with them as they're finding a job, right? So they are a mighty commission that can do a lot of great things, but it's knowing, are you eligible for that, right? Okay. Robert, I will say I'm gonna have to look into that because I've have not heard of how that program works with DVRS. Mm. All right, so as I said, with any of these funding agencies for supported employment, you'll be referred to a community provider agency that is going to deliver the supported employment service to you. There are agencies that are solely DVRS vendors, and there are agencies that are solely DDD qualified providers. And some agencies work with both funding sources. No matter what funding source is being used, the providers are supporting you on your employment journey through 3 phases of supported employment, right? And working with you, they are your partner, okay? Supported employment providers are not magic job fairies that come with jobs and just hand them on silver platters. They don't, okay? It is a partnership, right, with a shared purpose, right, of supporting you in finding a job, right, of finding the right job match, right? It is about meaningful and reinforcing activities that are going to support that job search, right? Consistent communication from both ends, right? And mutual respect, right? A good supported employment agency is not just about placing people, They are about getting to know you and supporting you in finding the right match, the right job that fits you. Okay? Right. I think, Kristen, it really is dependent on the needs. There are very specific needs when it comes to CBBI when it comes to preventative and rehabilitative support. So I think it depends on what is needed, right? But I would definitely speak to the commission first to see what you can do there and with them. Mhm. All right, so these phases of supported employment, no matter the funding source, right? Supported employment in general has these three phases. Okay. Now, depending on the funding source, like DVRS, their funding and the way that they kind of um, the way they work through their supported employment services is funding each phase of supported employment. So with DVRS, their funding is allotting an agency this much time for pre-placement, this much time for job coaching, this much time for long-term follow-along. Okay? And it's very specific. Like you are in this phase, you are in this phase, you are in this phase. DDD is a little different. Under DDD, everything's just called supported employment, right? And it's just all billed under that. But it's still, these are the phases that are happening, right, in supported employment. There's always pre-placement, everything that's happening before someone finds a job, right? Job coaching, what happens, and the support that's necessary when a person has the job and is on the job. And then long-term follow-along as that support starts to fade, right? So I want to look at each of these, right? And kind of an overview of it, but the pre-placement phase, this is person-centered discovery. And that person-centered discovery is about the service provider getting to know you. One of the critical roles of a service provider, and the job coach, the employment specialist, is to take the time to get to know you. Because how are they going to support you to find the right job match if they don't know you? Right? And so that's why I say use those tools to kind of organize your thoughts. And during that discovery time, they should be really getting to know you and having conversations to get to know you and get to know what your strengths are, what your preferences are, all of that. Right? In order to design really person-centered supports, a good agency, no matter what they use for getting to know you, right? Any discovery techniques or tools that they use, right? It should always be about listening to you, right? Listening to you, getting to know you, um, and to the point of understanding, right? And that means really not listening just to, to respond to you, but listening to truly understand what what's important to you, and then helping you act on that. Now, part of that pre-placement too is supporting you in having the tools you need to be successful in your job search. Okay? So, um, having an employment portfolio and what that looks like now, right? And I say an employment portfolio because it's more than a resume these days. And a good supported employment agency is going to really help you with that, right? Whether it's supporting you in building that resume, um, building your social media presence, and online presence, um, supporting you in figuring out who your letters of recommendation come from, right? Some may even help you with video resumes or things like that. Okay. Okay. how to help someone build their confidence. And that is great because, yes, I do. I think that it depends on the person, right? Some people need to see and know that they have the skills, right? And some of that um, can be through being and volunteering, right? Connecting in the community more. Um, Even depending on the funding source, I will say it. But there is situational assessments too, right? Situational assessments are not so much volunteering as really supporting you in a real work environment for a short period of time to see, do I have the skills here? Do I like the work environment? Do I want to try this? Now, under DDD, that just again falls under support employment. But something like that situational assessment under DVRS would be called a trial work experience, TWE, and it is billed separately. And if that's something that is really important to you, that is something that as you go through DVRS, you can talk to them about, you can talk to your counselor about, right? A trial work experience, right? Or a community-based work experience, CBWE. They just happen to have different funding streams for those. So you would talk specifically to a VR counselor about that. Okay. But again, a good supported employment agency is going to help you work through that and figure out how to support that, right? Um, Interview practices, what those look like, making sure that you are ready for that and what kind of support you want with that, right? It could be, I want you to just help me and practice with me. And it could be, I can do this on my own. I just want your practice. Or it could be, I want you there with me. Depends on you and what you need. Right? Same thing, right? The confidence building, also soft skills, right? How, what soft skills, taking a step back and really looking at it. Is it time management that I need help with? Is it remembering things that I need help with? Okay, let's look at what we need. Okay. I don't, but I'm wondering if the last presentation that Rob Kimmel did had some of that information in it. Mm. All right. Also, pre-placement is about the match. Okay. A good support employment agency is making sure that it's about the match, right? That the person and the job and the supports that are necessary work together, right? It's not just about kind of putting a square peg in a round hole. Well, we'll just make it fit. We'll figure it out. It's truly listening to the person and making sure that their strengths, their preferences, their support needs match the needs of the employer so that everything works together. Mm. So that's the pre-placement. Okay. After the pre-placement phase, it's job coaching. It's when the person gets the job. Okay. And job coaching phase is not just about how to do the job, right? That's part of it. But there's so much more to that. It is about what you need. Okay. All right. It's about what you need on the job. And it could be from self-management skills to communication skills, um, to navigating just the workplace culture, to educating an employer or coworkers on how to communicate best. Like there's so many different things that it could be. And that support can look like a lot of different things. A support employment provider could be on the job with you and, or they could not. They could just meet with you offsite It depends on your needs and what you want. But it's also about fading. Okay. It's about support and then it's about fading. Right? Bethany already talked to you about workplace accommodations, but a good supported employment agency is going to help you figure out accommodations and that might help you on the job. Yep. And then finally, the final phase is long-term follow along. Right? Now, long-term follow along is really about supporting retention, right? After getting the job, the employment journey changes for all of us. And now it's about thinking about what does success look like? What does what does our career look like? What does growth look like in this job, in this field? And long-term follow along is about supporting the retention, right? A good supported employment agency is not just defined by how many people get jobs, but how they're supporting people and keeping jobs. Right? So those are things that are really important, I think, to think about when looking for a supported employment provider, if that is the support that you need and that you want. Right? Can I suggest alternatives for LinkedIn? Hmm. There's a lot of different things out there. I will say I was one that was dragged kicking and screaming to LinkedIn, but I do see the benefit now. Um, I think it also depends on what you're looking for. I think overall LinkedIn is a really great networking social media. Right? Um, but again, it depends on the fields that you're looking for. I know um, the state has the same program, the state as a model employer for people with disabilities. Has anyone seen that? If you Google New Jersey SAME program, it should take you to this civil service website. But it's a place to look for jobs as well, but state level jobs. Um, and really, the state of New Jersey should be a model. So, and that's the program that they put into place. Okay. But when looking at um, social media, I mean, if you're looking at it as a networking space, LinkedIn. If you're looking at it as looking for job opportunities, it's I don't know, ZipRecruiter and Indeed and things like that. But again, I am so old school when it comes to looking for jobs. I am so pro networking and using your networks and, you know, telling everyone who will listen that you're looking for a job and this is the type of field you want to go in. This is the area you want to work in. I am very pro networking. Um, so, but we need help in that area sometimes too. And in that case, it also comes down to looking at the supported employment provider that you're working with and what do they do in terms of networking and asking questions around that. Now, this here is a tool, and I believe I put it into the handouts as well. I'm not sure, but you can always find it on our website. It's whichever funding source you're receiving supported employment services from, you will be working with a supported employment agency. If you're working with DVRS, you'll usually be assigned to an agency. Okay? With DDD, you have the opportunity to choose which agency provides services. But either way, you have the right to ask questions of a provider agency to understand how they can support you and what you can expect from them. Right. So this is, again, this is the tool that we put together to help with the process, or getting to know your provider. There's questions in here, there's things to ask of support employment providers so that it helps you along the way because you have that right. And you have the right to say or to even ask, like, it's not a provider that I'm gelling with. It's not, they don't seem to get what I want, or they don't seem to have the services that I need. Okay. All right. So that is it. Okay. That is all the information. I thank you, but I also wanted to say and get to some of the questions in the chat. Does the Bog Center have tiered levels of educational support? But how I would find, um, it depends on what you're looking for. I would love to have further conversations with you, Robert, because I'm really interested in a lot of the things that you were asking about. So I am going to put in to the chat my email address so you have it. And please feel free to use it. That's how I communicate with everybody. All right. So I'm gonna put that into the chat. I think it'll go to you. Oh no, it won't. It's only gonna go to hosts and panelists. Oh, thank you, Robert, for yours. Okay. Yes, that resource I think we should have it in there. If not, you can also find it on the Bog Center's website.
Yeah, if not, I will try to include it as well. So thank you so much, Jessica, for that really informative presentation. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. If your question was not answered, I will try to follow up with you. And Jessica's email, I was trying to copy and paste it to everyone, so we will get that to you all as well. Final reminder to be sure to complete the post-webinar survey. The link is available in the chat. Once the survey is completed, you will automatically receive your certificate of attendance via email. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and comments. We hope that you will join us for next week's webinar, Supporting Recovery Through Community Engagement. This does conclude today's webinar. Thank you so much.